I see you sitting there, the weight of the world pressing down on your shoulders, the emptiness echoing in the spaces where joy once lived. I know that feeling when everyone has disappeared, when those you called friends vanished like morning mist when the sun of your prosperity set. Your heart is heavy, carrying the absence of someone beloved, the hollow space at the table, the silence in the room where their laughter once filled every corner. You wonder if God has abandoned you too, if the heavens have turned deaf to your prayers. I know this pain intimately, for I too have walked through the desert of loss and loneliness. Yet within this very darkness, this seeming abandonment, lies the seed of your rebirth. The path through pain is not away from it, but through its center, where God waits silently, holding the lantern of transformation. I remember walking alone in the moonlit gardens of Kanya, my heart shattered like a clay vessel dropped from great height. My son had fallen ill, and despite my prayers, despite my devotion, despite all my knowledge of scripture and poetry, his fever would not break. I felt abandoned by the divine, cast out from grace. The silence of God was deafening, pressing against my ears like the roar of an invisible ocean. I screamed prayers into the night, but no answer came. Only silence, only emptiness, only the cold stars watching impassively above. It was in this moment of complete desolation that I first understood something that would forever change my relationship with suffering. The silence was not absence. It was presence so profound that my limited senses could not perceive it. Like eyes blinded by sudden brightness, my soul was overwhelmed not by God's absence, but by his total, complete presence. I had been seeking him in the wrong places, in answers and solutions, in miracles and interventions, when he was the very ground beneath my broken knees, the very air entering my sobbing lungs. Through the stillness of dawn, as the first threads of light pulled across the horizon, I heard not with my ears, but with my entire being, I have never left you. I am the silence itself. This realization did not immediately heal my outer circumstances, but it transformed the inner landscape where I had been dwelling in exile. I began to understand that God speaks most powerfully, not in dramatic displays of intervention, but in the gentle whisper that can only be heard when everything else falls quiet. You who sit in your room alone tonight, tears falling silently, wondering if anyone sees your pain, if anyone cares, if God himself remembers your name, hear me now. Your solitude is not abandonment, it is invitation. The very emptiness you feel is the vessel being prepared for filling. The silence that seems to mock your prayers is actually their answer arriving in a language you are just beginning to learn. The darkness around you is not the absence of light, but its birthplace. When the friends disappear, when family turns away, when the job is lost and the bank account empties, this is not God's punishment or forgetting. It is his mysterious mercy stripping away everything that stands between your naked soul and his embrace. He is calling you, through this pain, to a depth of relationship that comfort could never have led you to discover. This is the paradox that the world cannot understand. Sometimes the greatest gift is disguised as loss. I learned this truth not from books or teachers, but from the night itself, from the endless hours of grieving beside my son's bedside, from the moment when Shams, my beloved spiritual companion, disappeared, possibly murdered, leaving me drowning in an ocean of grief. It was these wounds that became windows, these very losses that became doorways to the divine. This is what I offer you now, not escape from your pain, but transformation through it. Not a way around your loneliness, but a path that leads through its center to communion with the friend who never leaves. Your tears are precious water for the garden of your soul. Your confusion is the beginning of a wisdom deeper than certainty. Your shattered heart is breaking open to receive what was too vast for it before. Try this simple practice. For 5 minutes each morning, sit with your pain without trying to fix it, escape it, or understand it. Place one hand on your heart, close your eyes, and simply breathe. With each inhale, silently say, God is here. With each exhale, release one fragment of resistance. Do not seek dramatic visions or immediate relief. Simply practice the holy art of presence. The same presence God offers you constantly, even now, especially now, in your darkest moment. Remember these words, born from my own nights of weeping. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Your very brokenness is creating the opening through which divine love can finally reach the depths of you that were sealed by comfort and certainty. Do not rush to close the wound. Do not hurry to silence the questions. Let this holy emptiness do its mysterious work. Tonight, before sleep, write down 3 specific instances of pain or loss in your life. Beside each, write simply, "Even here you are." This is not denial or spiritual bypassing. It is recognition of a reality more fundamental than your suffering, that the divine presence permeates all things, even those that appear to be its opposite. This practice does not eliminate pain, but it begins to transform it from meaningless suffering into the birth canal of deeper awareness. The silence that feels like abandonment is actually God speaking in the language of eternity. Learn to listen not with the ears, but with the soul, and you will discover that you have never been alone, not for a single moment. The one who counts your tears has been collecting them like precious gems, waiting for the moment when they can be transformed into the light by which others will find their way home. Your isolation is not punishment. It is preparation for a communion deeper than you have yet known. I walked the dusty roads of Anatolia with questions hanging heavy in my heart. The sun beat down mercilessly, much like the weight of grief that pressed upon my chest after losing my beloved teacher Shams. Every footstep felt like moving through thick mud, each breath a conscious effort against the tide of despair. I remember stopping by a well, parched with thirst both physical and spiritual, wondering if I would ever feel whole again. The water reflected my face, distorted and fractured, much like I felt inside. It was there, in that moment of complete honesty with myself, that I began to understand the true purpose of our wounds. For years I had been a respected scholar, a man of position and knowledge. I had memorized thousands of verses, led prayers, guided others. Yet none of that learning could prepare me for the raw reality of personal devastation. My books offered no comfort, my reputation no shelter. I was stripped bare by loss, left naked before the universe with nothing but my broken heart. And in that nakedness, I discovered something profound that no amount of study could have revealed. Our wounds are not obstacles to spiritual awakening, but the very doorway through which authentic transformation enters. I know you carry wounds that feel too heavy to bear. Perhaps you have lost someone whose presence made the world make sense. Perhaps addiction has pulled you back into darkness just when you thought you had found the light. Perhaps financial ruin has stripped away not just your security, but your very sense of worth. The specific shape of your suffering matters less than what it is teaching you. I want to ask you a question, and I ask you to be honest with me and yourself. Have you been fighting against your wounds rather than listening to what they are trying to teach you? If this touched something real inside you, if you recognize this struggle, write in the comments, "My wounds are my teachers, not my enemies." When you share this, you are not just freeing yourself, you are lighting a candle for someone still walking in darkness. Your courage to speak truth may be exactly what another soul needs to hear today. The greatest illusion that keeps us in suffering is the belief that pain should not exist in a spiritual life. I believed this too. I thought my devotion would shield me from loss, that my prayers would guarantee protection from life's storms. When Shams disappeared, I raged against God, feeling betrayed. How could the beloved allow such devastation to one who had served so faithfully? It took months of wandering, of sleepless nights and tear-stained prayers to understand that my very concept of the spiritual path had been flawed. I was seeking comfort when God was offering growth. I was demanding answers when wisdom was being born in the very space of not knowing. One evening, as I sat beside a small fire in the wilderness, watching the Siu-yi flames dance against the gathering darkness, a realization dawned within me like a soft light breaking over distant mountains. Our wounds are not punishments, but invitations. They are the precise places where the divine seeks entry into our lives. Just as the reed must be cut and hollowed to become a flute capable of making music, we too must be carved by suffering to become vessels through which love can sing. This understanding did not immediately ease my grief, but it transformed its meaning. My pain was no longer meaningless or cruel. It was the necessary hollowing that would allow God's breath to move through me. Consider your own deepest wounds, the relationship that shattered, the dream that died, the addiction that will not release its grip, the person who left and will not return. What if these are not failures or curses? What if they are the very places where transformation is trying to birth itself in your life? The darkness is not darkness at all, but the shadow cast by a light so bright our eyes have not yet adjusted to perceive it. When we fight against our wounds, we fight against our own becoming. When we numb our pain, we numb our capacity for the very joy we seek. There is a practice I learned during those wandering days that changed everything for me. Each morning, before prayers, I would place my hand over the center of my chest, close my eyes, and whisper to my wounds, "I am listening. What are you trying to teach me?" Then I would sit in silence for the space of 20 breaths, not seeking answers, but creating space for wisdom to emerge. Sometimes tears would come, sometimes anger, sometimes nothing but the sensation of breathing. But gradually, over weeks and months, this simple practice opened a conversation between my conscious mind and the deeper intelligence of my suffering. The wounds began to speak, not with words, but with insights that rose like bubbles from the depths of a still pond. Try this practice yourself. Each morning, for the next 7 days, create this sacred conversation with your own suffering. Do not force answers. Do not rush to conclusions. Simply create the space where listening can happen. After the 7th day, write down what you have discovered, even if it seems small or incomplete. The language of wounds is subtle and often slow to reveal its full meaning. Be patient with the process. Be gentle with yourself. Remember this truth that came to me beside that midnight fire. The crack in your heart is not a flaw, but the necessary opening through which the light enters. We are not meant to be seamless, perfect vessels. We are meant to be broken and mended again and again, each fracture filled with the gold of greater wisdom, each mending making us more beautiful, more unique, more authentically ourselves. This is the art of kintsukuroi that God practices with human souls, filling our broken places with the gold of divine presence. I discovered through my own painful journey that when we embrace our wounds rather than deny or fight them, they become our greatest teachers. They humble our ego, soften our judgments of others, deepen our capacity for compassion, and open us to dimensions of love we could never access from the shallow waters of comfort. The wound becomes a well, drawing from the deepest aquifers of wisdom. The loss becomes a doorway to finding what can never be lost. The addiction becomes the teacher of true freedom. But only if we have the courage to sit with our pain, to honor it, to listen to its difficult wisdom. Tonight, before you sleep, place both hands over your heart and speak gently to your deepest wound. I acknowledge you. I honor the wisdom you are trying to bring me. I am listening now. Then allow yourself to feel whatever arises without judgment or resistance. This simple act of acknowledgement is the beginning of healing, not as escape from pain, but as transformation through it. The wound remains, but its meaning changes. It becomes no longer your enemy, but your teacher, no longer your shame, but your strength. For what you have survived has forged in you a depth that no ease or comfort could ever create. Remember these words when darkness gathers around you. Every pain is a doorway. Every loss reveals what cannot be lost. Every ending makes space for a deeper beginning. I promise you, from the other side of my own devastation, that the very wounds you wish to escape are secretly conspiring for your awakening. Trust them. Listen to them. Follow their difficult guidance. They are leading you home to yourself and to the God who has been waiting there all along in the very center of your broken heart. I remember the night that broke me open. The markets of Kanya had closed, the evening prayers had ended, and I found myself alone in my chamber, surrounded by books that suddenly seemed hollow, filled with words but emptied of meaning. My reputation as a teacher and scholar meant nothing in that moment. The moon cast silver light through the window, illuminating the prayer rug where I had prostrated myself thousands of times, yet I could not bring myself to kneel. A drought had settled in my soul, and all the wells of certainty had run dry. I whispered into the darkness, "Where are you when I can no longer feel your presence? Have you abandoned me to this emptiness?" No thunderous reply came. No vision appeared to comfort me. No sudden warming of the heart reassured me of divine presence. There was only the sound of wind moving through the courtyard, the distant barking of dogs, and my own breathing, shallow and tense. The ego inside me panicked, urging me to find distraction, to seek another teacher, to abandon this path that had led to such desolation. It whispered seductive alternatives, return to pure scholarship, where the mind could remain safe in its fortress of concepts, pursue worldly pleasures that offered immediate comfort, numb the pain with whatever means available. Anything to escape this terrifying void. Yet something deeper than my frightened mind held me in that room, on that night, facing that emptiness. Something beyond my understanding kept me breathing when breath seemed pointless, kept me present when every instinct urged escape. Was it faith? I cannot say it was, for all faith seemed to have deserted me. Was it hope? No, for hope requires the ability to imagine a better future, and my imagination had gone dark. Perhaps it was simply the exhaustion of running, a final surrender born not of wisdom, but of having no path left, but straight through the center of my fear. As dawn approached, painting the eastern sky with hesitant light, I noticed something extraordinary in its ordinariness. I was still there, still breathing, still conscious. The night of the soul had not destroyed me, though it had dissolved much of what I had believed myself to be. And in that simple continuation of existence, I glimpsed a truth beyond all the theologies I had studied and taught, that life itself is the primary miracle, the fundamental grace that precedes all others. My being persisted, with or without my understanding or control. Something was breathing me, sustaining me, carrying me through darkness without requiring my comprehension or even my cooperation. That morning marked the beginning of a different kind of spiritual journey, not the ascent toward light I had always imagined, but a descent into the rich soil of reality where actual growth occurs. I began to understand that what we call crisis is often the necessary collapse of illusions, making space for truth to reveal itself. The very emptiness that terrified me was not abandonment by the divine, but an invitation to know God beyond the limitations of my concepts and expectations. The silence was not absence, but a deeper kind of presence, one that could only be perceived when all the noise of my assumptions fell away. If these words are touching something deep in you, if you feel this conversation is for your soul, subscribe to this channel. Here, I share teachings for those seeking truth, transformation, and the awakening of the heart. Activate the bell so my words continue reaching you. You may be experiencing your own night of the soul right now. Perhaps everything that gave your life meaning and structure has been stripped away. A relationship, a career, your health, your financial security, your very sense of identity. Perhaps you too have whispered desperate questions into seeming emptiness and heard only silence in return. Perhaps you have tried everything you know to escape the void, distraction, numbness, frantic activity, even intensified spiritual practice. Yet the emptiness persists, patient and uncompromising in its demand to be faced. I say to you what I wish someone had said to me on that terrifying night. This emptiness is not your enemy. This darkness is not punishment. This silence is not abandonment. This is the necessary winter that precedes new growth. This is the cocoon stage that looks like death but is secretly transformation. This is the empty page upon which a new story is about to be written. Do not run from it. Do not numb it. Do not fill it prematurely with noise and activity. Dare to remain present to it, breathing into its center, allowing it to do its mysterious work. Here is a practice that carried me through that time, So simple it may seem insignificant, yet so powerful it may save your life as it saved mine. Each morning, before you do anything else, place both feet on the floor, feel the solid earth supporting you, and take 3 conscious breaths. With the first breath, acknowledge whatever pain or emptiness you feel without trying to change it. With the second breath, recognize that something larger than your understanding is breathing you, sustaining you even in this difficulty. With the third breath, offer yourself to the day exactly as you are, without pretense or performance, trusting that your broken authenticity is more valuable than any false wholeness. This practice does not promise immediate relief or dramatic transformation. It offers something more subtle and ultimately more reliable, a gradual shift in your relationship with difficulty itself. Over time, you will discover that you can remain present to what once seemed unbearable. You will find that emptiness, when faced directly, reveals hidden fullness. You will notice that silence, when truly listened to, contains whispers of wisdom that noise could never convey. The crisis becomes not something merely to survive, but a dark womb from which new life emerges. During my own time in that wilderness, I discovered a truth that contradicts all conventional wisdom. Control is not power. Surrender is. Not surrender in the sense of giving up or admitting defeat, but the profound surrender that comes from recognizing a greater intelligence at work in the very fabric of existence. I had spent years trying to control my spiritual journey, measuring progress, setting goals, evaluating myself against ideals of sainthood. All of that striving had led me to collapse. But in that collapse, I found what my striving had obscured, that God does not need my effort to reach me, only my willingness to be reached. The simple practice of presence, of showing up each day to whatever is without demanding it be different, gradually transformed my understanding of spirituality itself. No longer a ladder to climb or a contest to win, the spiritual path revealed itself as a continual homecoming to what had been present all along, obscured only by my concepts and expectations. The divine was not waiting at the end of a long journey. It was the ground beneath my feet, the air in my lungs, the awareness reading these very words through your eyes right now. My seeking had been the very veil hiding what I sought. This is the paradox that waits at the heart of every spiritual crisis. What seems like God's absence is actually an invitation to know God's presence in a deeper way. What feels like abandonment is actually the removal of everything that stands between you and direct experience of the divine. What appears as darkness is the shadow cast by a light too bright for your unaccustomed eyes. The emptiness that terrifies the ego is the spaciousness in which the soul can finally breathe. Tonight, I invite you to a simple ceremony of surrender. Find a quiet place where you will not be disturbed. Light a single candle, symbol of the awareness that remains even in darkness. Take 3 deep breaths, feeling the air move in and out of your body. Then speak these words aloud. I surrender my need to understand. I surrender my demand for answers. I open myself to the mystery that is living me. I trust the darkness to do its work. Sit in silence for a few minutes, allowing whatever arises, sensations, emotions, thoughts, to come and go without grasping or rejecting. End by blowing out the candle, a reminder that some kinds of light must die for new light to be born. Remember this truth that was revealed to me in my own night of unknowing. The path is not always forward. Sometimes it leads straight into the center of what you fear most, but what you fear most is where your greatest treasure lies buried. The very crisis that seems to threaten your faith is actually faith's deepening. The emptiness that feels like God's absence is the clearing of space for God's fuller presence. The darkness that frightens you is the fertile soil from which new life is already emerging, tender and green, reaching toward a light you will soon perceive. After months of wandering the deserts of both the outer world and my inner landscape, I found myself sitting beside a small stream outside Damascus. The water flowed with quiet persistence, neither hurried nor stagnant, simply following its nature with perfect trust. As I watched the gentle current carrying leaves and reflected light, a realization dawned within me like the slow rising of the morning sun. Spirituality is not what I had believed it to be. I had been seeking dramatic experiences, revelations that would split the heavens open, transformations that would instantly dissolve my suffering. But the stream before me taught a humbler, more powerful truth. Constancy matters more than intensity. For years I had practiced my faith with passionate devotion, fasting until weakness overcame me, praying until my voice grew hoarse, studying sacred texts until my eyes burned. I mistook spiritual drama for spiritual depth. I confused emotional intensity for transformation. When Shams first appeared in my life, throwing my books into water to teach me that knowledge without experience is empty, I thought I had found the path of fire that would consume all my limitations at once. But after his disappearance, when that fire seemed to have gone out, I discovered something more enduring, the quiet flame that never exhausts its fuel. The patient discipline of simply remaining present day after day to what is. This is what I learned beside that stream. Faith is not a feeling. Faith is remaining. The ego demands constant stimulation, dramatic signs, emotional confirmation. It wants spirituality to be a series of peaks without valleys, light without shadow, answers without questions. But the soul knows a deeper truth, that God is found not only in ecstatic union, but in faithful presence to the ordinary moment. The divine speaks not only through visions and dreams, but through the humble rituals of daily life, attended to with full awareness and loving care. What transforms us most deeply is not what we do occasionally with great intensity, but what we practice daily with quiet consistency. From this understanding was born what I came to call the discipline of the heart, a simple yet profound practice that creates space for grace to enter our everyday existence. Each morning when I awake, before my feet touch the floor, I place one hand over my heart and speak these words silently. Today, I choose to remain present, whatever comes. This simple dedication sets the tone for the day, reminding me that spirituality is not something I do at special times or in special places, but a quality of attention I bring to every moment, every task, every encounter. The discipline continues with 3 movements of the heart practiced throughout the day. The first is conscious silence, 5 minutes 3 times daily when I stop whatever I am doing to simply listen. Not to achieve anything or receive any particular insight, but to remember that beneath all my activity and thinking, I am being breathed, being lived, being loved by a presence that never abandons me. This practice cuts through the trance of busyness that makes us forget who we truly are. In the markets of Kanya, in the midst of teaching, even during difficult conversations, I would pause for these moments of remembrance, touching the ground of being beneath the surface of doing. The second movement is what I call small daily order, the practice of tending with full attention to one simple task, making my bed with care rather than haste, washing dishes as if they were sacred objects, writing one page with full presence rather than many with divided attention, paying one debt, however small, with gratitude rather than resentment. This is not perfectionism or obsession with control. It is loving stewardship of the life I have been given. I discovered that when I brought order to these small corners of my existence, larger areas gradually followed suit. The outer arrangement reflected and reinforced an inner alignment, as within, so without. The third movement is service or gratitude, one conscious act each day that benefits someone else or acknowledges the gifts I've received, a message of encouragement to one who struggles, a moment of full listening without interruption or judgment, a coin given where need is evident, a prayer of thanks for specific mercies, named and counted like precious gems. These acts break the mirror of self-absorption in which we so easily become trapped, turning that mirror into a window through which we can see and respond to the world beyond our own concerns. These are not heroic gestures. They are seeds planted in the soil of ordinary days. The ego craves dramatic spiritual experiences. The soul trusts the slow, invisible growth that happens beneath the surface. Begin today, exactly where you are, with whatever resources you have. You too can start again, no matter what has happened before this moment. When no feeling comes, remain in the practice. When no visible result appears, continue. When the old wounds throb with pain, stay present to them without trying to escape. In this faithful remaining, roots find water, seeds find soil, and what seemed dead comes quietly alive. I discovered that these three movements of the heart, practiced with patience rather than perfectionism, gradually reshape the inner landscape. Like water that slowly reshapes stone, not through force but through faithful presence, these simple practices began to wear new channels in my consciousness. The noise that had deafened me to the subtle voice of wisdom grew quieter. The hurry that had blinded me to the beauty of the present moment slowed its frantic pace. The mirror of comparison, in which I had measured myself against others and always found myself wanting, began to reflect instead the unique being that I was created to be. What emerges from this patient discipline is not the eradication of difficulty. Life continues to bring its challenges, its losses, its unanswered questions, but a new relationship with difficulty itself. Problems become teachers rather than enemies. Obstacles become invitations to creative response rather than barriers to progress. Even pain, that most unwelcome of guests, becomes a messenger, bringing news from depths we might otherwise never explore. The heart grows spacious enough to hold what once seemed unbearable, and in that spaciousness, grace moves with greater freedom. Remember this truth, which came to me not in a vision, but in the quiet moments of faithful practice. The drop of water that shapes the stone does not believe in dramatic results. It believes in showing up day after day, exactly where it is meant to be. Let this be your meditation as you begin your own discipline of the heart. Trust not in sudden transformation, but in faithful presence. The divine is never in a hurry, yet never arrives late. The same presence that sustains the stars in their courses is sustaining you, even now, especially now, in your imperfect, beautiful, unfinished becoming. The change came not as lightning, but as dawn, a gradual illumination that I almost failed to notice. After months of practicing the discipline of the heart, the conscious silence, the small daily order, the acts of service and gratitude, I found myself standing in the marketplace of Kanya one ordinary afternoon, watching the merchants and customers, the children playing between stalls, the old men sitting in conversation. Nothing around me had changed, yet everything appeared different, as if a veil had thinned between this world and another, revealing the sacred pulsing within the mundane. Each face shone with a light I had not perceived before, each voice carried undertones I had not been able to hear. I stood very still, afraid that any movement might break this delicate perception, this glimpse of what had always been present but hidden from my eyes. That moment marked a turning in my journey that I can only describe as the fruit of faithful practice. What intensity had never achieved, constancy accomplished with quiet power. Like the patient earth that never rushes yet never fails to transform seed into harvest, the disciplines I had embraced were changing me from within, reshaping my perception not through dramatic intervention, but through gradual awakening. I want you to understand this deeply. Transformation rarely announces itself with trumpets and processions. It comes on quiet feet, often recognized only in retrospect, in the moment when you suddenly realize that what once tormented you no longer holds power, that what once seemed impossible now feels like your natural way of being. I remember walking home that evening, the light fading into dusk, and noticing that the anxious voice that had been my constant companion for so long had fallen silent. Not because I had conquered it through force of will, but because I had stopped giving it the energy of my attention. Through daily practice, I had shifted my focus from the noise of fear to the quiet current of trust that had been flowing beneath it all along. The voice had not been vanquished. It had simply lost its audience. I whispered to myself, surprised at the truth rising within me. When I ordered my soul, life itself became ordered, and I knew with unshakable certainty that it was so. You who are listening now may be waiting for dramatic signs that your spiritual practice is bearing fruit, for sudden revelations or emotional confirmations. But I urge you to attune your senses to subtler indications of transformation. Notice the small mercies that begin to appear. A clear thought where confusion reigned yesterday, a gentle impulse to forgive where resentment once festered, an unexpected moment of laughter rising from a heart that had forgotten joy. These humble signs are worth more than spectacular visions, for they indicate changes taking root in the soil of daily life, not merely passing through the skies of temporary experience. I began to recognize these quiet markers of transformation in my own life. Work, which had once been either a burden to escape or a stage for achieving recognition, gradually became simply a field to cultivate with presence and care. Some relationships healed without dramatic conversations through the your steady application of new ways of listening and responding. Others remained difficult or distant, and I finally found the wisdom to bless them for protecting what was not mine to possess. When I brought order to my inner dwelling through faithful practice, the outer dwelling of my life reflected that same emerging harmony. Not perfectly, not without continuing challenges, but with a growing sense of alignment between inner and outer worlds. The signs were indeed humble. Fewer arguments with myself about what should be happening versus what was actually unfolding. A steadier breath during times of stress or conflict. A growing capacity to give without calculating what I would receive in return. A deepening ability to witness pain without immediately trying to escape it. I felt God's presence not as lightning striking from above, but as warmth spreading through the cold rooms of my being. I learned to read silence as scripture, finding in its depths messages that noise had always drowned out. Silence became my teacher, I would tell my students, when I finally learned how to listen to what it was saying. This is the paradox that the ego cannot comprehend, but the soul recognizes as truth. What we pursue often eludes us. What we allow to unfold naturally through faithful presence often arrives with quiet grace. When I stopped chasing divine experience as something separate from ordinary life, the divine began to reveal itself within the very fabric of the everyday. The boundary between sacred and profane, which I had guarded so vigilantly, began to dissolve. I discovered that everything is holy when perceived with the eyes of the heart, that every moment is an opportunity for communion with the beloved who never ceases to speak through the language of created things. As my perception shifted, I noticed changes in the most practical areas of life. When material resources came, they carried with them a sense of integrity and purpose rather than anxiety about losing them or craving for more. When relationships deepened, it was through the patient work of authentic presence rather than dramatic declarations or manipulative strategies. I walked more slowly through my days and yet arrived more deeply at their meaning. The cynical voice that had always commented from the sidelines grew bored with my refusal to engage with it. Hope quietly returned to work. My heart, which had been clenched like a fist against pain, gradually opened like a lamp cupped by patient hands, neither hiding its light nor casting it carelessly to the winds. Try this practice for recognizing the subtle signs of transformation in your own life. Each evening before sleep, ask yourself these 3 questions. First, what small moment of peace did I experience today? Second, what old pattern did I notice without being captured by it? Third, where did I feel connected to something larger than my separate self? Write your answers in a journal, not judging them for significance, but simply recording them as you would record the phases of the moon or the changing seasons. Over time, patterns will emerge, revealing the quiet miracle of your own transformation, happening not through dramatic intervention, but through faithful attention to the ordinary moments that make up a life. Remember this truth, which came to me after years of seeking dramatic spiritual experiences and finding them ultimately hollow. The deepest changes write themselves in whispers, not in shouts. Listen closely to what seems insignificant, for there the sacred most loves to hide. The genuine fruits of spiritual practice reveal themselves not in how special we feel, but in how present we can be to what is, not in achieving perfect states, but in responding with greater wisdom and compassion to imperfect situations. The ego always wants to make spirituality exotic. The soul knows it to be the most natural thing in the world, the simple recognition of what has been true all along. Tonight, sit quietly for 10 minutes and simply notice the quality of your own presence, not judging it as good or bad, advanced or elementary, but simply observing it with kind attention. Notice if there is more spaciousness where constriction once dominated, more patience where irritation once flared quickly, more compassion where judgment once rushed to conclusions. These subtle shifts are the true gold of transformation, more valuable than any dramatic experience that comes and goes like a summer storm. They indicate that your practice is taking root in fertile soil, that what you are doing faithfully, day by day, is gradually reshaping not just isolated moments, but the very ground of your being from which all moments arise. As the years passed and my hair turned from black to silver, I found myself standing in a quieter center of being. The tempests that had once driven me from shore to shore subsided, not because the world had become more peaceful, but because something within me had found its anchor. I do not claim perfection. I claim presence. I do not pretend to have transcended the human condition. I have simply learned to inhabit it more fully, with greater awareness and compassion. The journey from that devastated night when I lost Shams to this more spacious dwelling place was not a straight line, but a spiral, returning again and again to the same core lessons, yet each time from a slightly different perspective, gradually integrating what once seemed impossibly paradoxical. I notice that the 7 habits of the ego still knock at my door: noise, hurry, comparison, control, self-judgment, isolation, cynicism. They arrive like old acquaintances expecting to be welcomed as honored guests, but I no longer offer them the best room in my inner home. I bow to them with recognition, smile with the compassion one offers to persistent children, and gently direct my attention back to the 3 movements of the heart that have become my compass. Conscious silence, small, daily order, service, and gratitude. These simple practices, embraced not with rigid perfectionism, but with loving faithfulness, continue to lead me home to the truth of who I am beyond all the identities I once clung to so desperately. Here is the essence of what I have learned, distilled from decades of seeking, finding, losing, and finding again. Pain purified what pride could not reach. The very suffering I tried so hard to escape became the doorway to a depth of understanding that comfort could never have revealed. Silence taught what shouting could never convey, becoming not the absence of wisdom, but its most eloquent expression. And God never departs. It is we who run from the divine presence that sustains us in every moment, like fish swimming frantically in search of water, unaware that what we seek surrounds and permeates us always, is the very element in which we live and move and have our being. I offer you this blessing and instruction, drawn not from books or hearsay, but from the lived experience of one who has walked through fire and found it to be ultimately purifying. Keep a small appointment with your soul each day. 5 minutes of conscious silence in which you simply sit, breathe, and listen without agenda or expectation. One small act of order, tending with full attention to some neglected corner of your life. One gesture of service or gratitude, breaking the spell of self-concern that keeps us trapped in suffering. These humble practices, maintained with patient faithfulness, will do more to transform your life than all the dramatic resolutions or intense spiritual experiences you might pursue. For what changes us most deeply is not what we do occasionally with great passion, but what we practice daily with quiet conviction. Write this aphorism on your heart, for I give it to you as a lamp for dark passages. Where I stand still in truth, God moves everything that must move. When we cease our frantic activity and simply become present to what is, we create space for grace to operate in ways our own effort could never accomplish. This is not passivity or resignation. It is active surrender to a wisdom greater than our limited understanding. It is stepping out of our own way so that the river of life can flow freely through us and around us, carrying us to places our own paddling could never reach. I have known times of great darkness when this truth was obscured, when God seemed absent and all spiritual practice felt hollow. I have sat by the graves of loved ones, tears falling onto dry earth, wondering how life could possibly continue after such loss. I have walked through streets filled with suffering and injustice that seem to mock all notions of divine compassion. I have faced my own capacity for self-deception, for causing harm even with the best of intentions. These experiences did not destroy my faith, they deepened it beyond all comforting illusions, into a trust that can hold both the beautiful and the terrible aspects of existence without splitting them into separate realms. This is the faith I wish for you. Not a fragile certainty that must deny difficult realities to survive, but a robust trust that can embrace the fullness of human experience while recognizing the thread of grace that runs through all of it. A faith that does not demand that God conform to your expectations, but opens itself to the mystery that is always greater than our understanding. A faith that finds God not only in moments of ecstasy and insight, but in times of confusion and loss, knowing that the divine is present not despite our suffering, but within it, transforming it from the inside out into wisdom and compassion. Choose one micro-habit now, one small practice to begin this very day. Place your hand on your chest and breathe consciously 10 times, counting silently with each inhale and exhale, feeling the miracle of breath that continues, whether you attend to it or not. Then, identify one small space in your home or workplace that needs attention and bring order to it with full presence, treating each object as if it were sacred, which indeed it is when perceived with the eyes of the heart. Finally, send one message of genuine appreciation to someone whose gift to your life may have gone unacknowledged, or write down 3 specific things for which you are grateful, naming them precisely rather than generally. Let these 3 simple actions be your prayer today, more powerful than many words offered without presence. Hear these final words as a lamp I place in your hands for the journey ahead. Silence is also an answer. When you pray and hear nothing in return, remember that God's primary language is silence. Everything else is a poor translation. God is not late. You are learning to wait. The divine operates according to a timing we cannot comprehend from our limited perspective. What seems like delay is often perfect orchestration of elements we cannot perceive. What pain does not destroy, it purifies. Suffering that does not crush us completely has the potential to refine us, removing what is false and revealing what is essential. Today, do not ask for miracles. Ask for silence and listen within it. There, God waits for you with infinite patience and tender compassion. There, beneath all the noise and hurry of the mind, your true self waits to be recognized and embraced. There, in the space between your thoughts, wisdom grows like a garden tended by unseen hands. All spiritual practice is ultimately about creating openings for what is already present to reveal itself, not about manufacturing experiences or acquiring special states. The treasure you seek is buried not in some distant land, but in the field of this very moment, this ordinary, extraordinary gift of being alive. If this message has resonated in your soul, subscribe and be part of this awakening journey. Each week I bring wisdom for those who have chosen the path of true transformation. And leave in the comments, I am ready to stand still and let God move what must move. This simple declaration marks the beginning of your journey back home, back to yourself, back to the divine presence that has never left you, even for a single moment, even in your darkest hour, even when all evidence seemed to suggest abandonment. The Beloved has been holding your name, waiting with infinite patience for you to quiet the noise enough to hear the whisper that has never ceased. You are loved. You are not alone. You are already home.